let's talk for the next 20 minutes about value. Let's talk about social value. Let's talk about the value of putting a veteran or any other member of the community who's having a really difficult time in their life, who's maybe had a rough upbringing, putting them around the kitchen table to eat supper with us in an evening. The fact that the mobile phones don't put an appearance in at the kitchen table, the TV's turned off, that we all have a rule, and I'm pretty much sure most farming families do, that your business is done at the kitchen table. If somebody's got a beef with something, get it said. If somebody's got something they want to ask you, don't ask you when you're in the middle of a busy day. Ask us when we're sitting down at the dinner table and my focus is on you and I'm listening to what you've got to say. The value of sharing our ethos and our approach to life, when you speak to a social worker, a probation officer, a school teacher, the social value that we can impart and share with those who are maybe struggling in life it is almost unquantifiable. And I'll give you a few more examples as we go along. I'll start with a few introductions. First one, Danny's here. He comes from these parts. Danny's a veteran who's staying with us at the moment up in Sedbergh. Former member of the Royal Green Jackets, and I happened to serve with his brother in Northern Ireland, Bosnia, and the Middle East. So the army's getting smaller and smaller. There's only 70,000 now, and it feels like we all know each other, and if we don't, we know somebody who knows somebody. And so my background is, as I said, 5th generation farmer, got to the age of 16, was sick of my father force feeding me farming, so I wanted to be away, and I joined the army to escape farming. I lost my way obviously along the path and ended up back in it, but I joined the army, spent 17 years. I can honestly say I loved every minute of it. So fast forward, I left the army 2005 from Yemen. As I say, I did 9 years between Iraq and Afghanistan doing the indigenous engagement stuff. 2014, Rory Stewart, the MP, was tasked by Theresa May, who was Home Secretary at the time, to do a review into veterans in the criminal justice system. And I just got back, getting the farming operation and everything moving in Sedbergh, and Rory asked me if I'd give him a hand to do the review. I was interested because it was kind of an itch that I hadn't finished scratching of the guys I'd seen in Iraq and Afghanistan. I could see that they weren't being looked after as well as they might have been. Some of the issues around equipment, leadership, mutual support weren't what they could have been. So I expected to find some drama when we did the review. Some of the findings we found was 10% of the prison population is veteran, is somebody who served in the armed forces. That was quite a shocker for me. How have we got 1 in 10 of guys who theoretically were amongst the best of the generation? Why are they now in prison? So a lot of the work we did was with our cousins in America, and we found that after Vietnam, they'd identified the incubation period for combat-related psychological trauma was 10 to 14 years. So the psychological trauma that they experienced in Vietnam, it took 10 to 14 years until that manifested into social isolation, unacceptable behaviour, spiralling into homelessness, criminality, and all the other touch points on the way. We are now seeing, and I can say because obviously my work has continued since 2014, we're now seeing exactly that profile hitting our prison service with the guys who were deployed at surge into Afghanistan in 2008. That's who we're picking up in Hindley Prison down here, very regularly, HMP Preston, Lancaster Farms. All these, a lot of the guys and girls that are in prison because psychological illness has gone untreated and undiagnosed. There's some discussion earlier about the stigma around mental health. A massive problem amongst the alpha male community in the armed forces. Equally so, I'll say, amongst the farming community, a lot of alpha males as well, who won't call mental health what it is, an illness that nobody should be ashamed of, and we should talk about more openly. To follow on, you know, that incubation period, 10 to 14 years, we found that 78% of the veterans in prison had been engaged with children's services pre-enlistment. So I think it was yourself that mentioned childhood experience, and clearly map that now when we're talking about social value and how we as farmers can trade value and not commodities. When somebody's had a difficult childhood, they may not have had the best role models as parents. They may not have had a functioning family unit as a child. To come into our kitchens, which is, let's be honest, they're not often functioning either. But it's a totally different environment when they come in and they see our families functioning, and they see us functioning under pressure. Conflict resolution, massive factor. Over 70% of veterans in prison are in for violent offences. 52% of them are domestic abusers in their offending profile. How do we get to that point? Well, 78% of them, I'm sorry to throw so many numbers around, 78% of them were engaged with children's services pre-enlistment. So of course there's a correlation in conflict resolution at home and how they've learnt to resolve conflict at home and how that now appears in their offending history. And that role model piece, where are they going to learn any different? Where is anybody going to have the courage to challenge unacceptable behaviour if it's not in the family home? So it's challenging perceptions, challenging unacceptable behaviour when it appears, and around the kitchen table, creating the right environment that we can break down some of these taboos and some of these stigmas. Other statistics which were probably the most concerning ones were the reoffending rates. So 46% of veterans in prison will reoffend within 18 months of release from prison. Most of them category A, category B offenders. So about 3,500 there was in prison in 2014. It's roughly the same number now. We know 46% of them will reoffend, and us as taxpayers will be paying about 26 grand a year to keep them in prison. That is unsustainable. You could argue morally questionable as well. How do we as farmers have a meaningful impact on that? Well, I guess that's a choice for the farmer. All I would come back to is, let's trade in value sometimes and not commodities. Let's consider that if you want to engage with your local probation authority, or you want office, or you want to engage with your local young offenders group, or any collection or touch point of disadvantaged vulnerable people, don't underestimate the value of taking them hedging or walling for a day, or cleaning out drains and gutters if you're doing some irrigation work. Please don't underestimate the value of sitting down at lunchtime with them, whatever task you've been doing. You could have been mucking a car full out, you could have been in a lambing shed. It doesn't matter what the vehicle of recovery, rehabilitation is. It's the ethos and the culture that we have as a farming community to put into people, and that come back to talking the language, come back to understanding the dialect and being able to communicate. We do that all the time, because a lot of the time as farmers, you feel like you're surrounded with parasites, don't you? Everybody's trying to take, I'll help you. The vet will come, they want to have some money out of you. The land agents, they're here, they'll want some money out of you. You know, all these feeders off your farming enterprise, you have to talk in their language and they have to talk in yours to understand each other. So in a social value context, we've all got to exchange social value and give and take a little bit. And so the question, I'm just conscious of time, the question that not people normally throw at us when we talk about it is, well, how do we make money out of exchanging social value? Well, let me give you a few metrics around that. Every category A or B prisoner that leaves prison, remember 46% of them at the moment are going to reoffend if they're a veteran, probably because the psychological illness and the mental health has gone unaddressed because we've locked them up and made that condition worse. But don't get me going on that. They all leave prison with a £10,000 budget that the probation officer can put into their rehabilitation. Every category A, category B offender. Everybody who's going through the NHS transition into mental health services, and currently average waiting times to get a veteran in front of a clinical psychologist with the NHS is 4.2 years. So from them saying, I need help, to sitting in front of somebody who can peel back all the different layers of the onion skin to get to the root cause and then weave together a recovery plan that has coherency, 4.2 years. As a charity, we short circuit that, costs us £500 a time to get them into private clinical psychology, but then we build the momentum in recovery. Every one of those guys and girls that goes to ask for mental health support, veteran or not, has the right, I guess, to claim their patient fund back from the NHS. Most people don't know about that. So if you opt out of NHS care, you can claim the NHS budget for the care you're going to receive. So you'll hear the term green prescriptions is now being bandied around. That means a doctor, a GP, can prescribe and pick up guys that Danny is familiar with in the current cohort coming through our place. On a green prescription, they're prescribed to come onto your farm and rehabilitate and to exchange value and to decompress and recalibrate their lives with the ethos and value that we as a farming community can trade. I guess to wrap up and hit the timeline is the charity I run is called the Rothy Project. You're more than welcome to look up rothy.org online and see more about the project. I'm more than happy if you want to come and visit the project at any time. Since starting in 2014, we've supported 348 armed forces veterans. That's the singular, but with every veteran comes a family and the generations that follow and the intergenerational challenge. We'll go back to the lad that had supper with us last night. He's got a son 9 and a daughter 6 who've had 9 years and 6 years of dad in chaos. So whilst having 348 is the singular number of veterans, imagine how many multi-generational challenges we've taken on to stop and try and mitigate the chances of them following the example that mum and dad have set. He's from Falkirk, is the lad that I'm referring to there. So it's a nationwide challenge. To do that, we've built a network, as at this morning, of 478 peer mentors nationwide. So we use our peer mentors to get out into all the touch points, the homeless shelters, food banks, addiction, alcoholism, support services in the community, mental health services, GP surgeries. They touch all those points around the country, find the trouble, refer it back into us, and we try and get people the help and support that they need. So a little hill farm tucked away in the Yorkshire Dales can have the effect over 8 years of 328 beneficiaries plus families. If the farming community, and this is what government aren't getting at the moment, if the farming community nationally, as we all hit the turbulence, really engaged with the social challenge, we wouldn't be facing the social care and NHS challenges that we're going to hit 2030 onwards. So I guess it's kind of a sales pitch to everybody in the farming community to say, please consider the value and not the price of everything. You can realise the value in your business models as long as you're prepared to engage with some of the darker areas of society where people wake up every morning and they might be struggling with life and need a hand up and not a hand out. Thank you.